It's draft week, and we are right back where we started. A name that we were mentioning months ago. The smoke is back for Tet McMillan. We'll talk about that and more here on Locked On Jaguar.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rolling along here on draft week, I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. You can find each and every day wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you tap into that location, whether you watch or listen. We will absolutely be there because it is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We always thank you for making us your first listen. Today's episode is brought to you by the all-new Nissan 2025 Nissan Armada. Stay tuned for the Armada Player of the Week later in the show. I know y'all say, we ain't got no games yet. It's all right. You got to respect the player. You ain't got to respect the game. We got a Player of the Week you guys got to pay attention to, and we'll get to it. Let me tell you where we're headed with this show. Which way is best? What do you mean by that? Well, I'll tell you in segment 2, because there's many paths to consider. And there's not one that you can prove right now that's more right and wrong or right or wrong. That has to be proven on the field. And I'll give you an interesting scenario. Like you can get something right and still not get things right on the field. We'll discuss that here in segment number 2. But we're going to start the show back to where we started at number 5. And what do I mean by that? Well, I got this little philosophy that when it comes to the draft, one of the things that I've always paid attention to is, what do I initially think back in like February, like once that first week of free agency has gone by? That's probably March, by the way, or whenever that is, that first week of free agency. Normally, I know how I feel about prospects and I know how I feel about players and the possibilities of who the Jaguars might take, right? And then as we go through free agency, you get more clarity. And everybody knows, if you heard my podcast, I've always gone against the grain when they say, why do you do a mock draft? I know why people do it, because, it's for content purposes, but you're not going to get anything solved trying to fix or do a mock draft before free agency, because a lot of times not only your team, but the teams that you are mocking certain players to, or the simulators mocking certain players too. Teams address that stuff in free agency. So there are a lot of people, like, for instance, mocking wide receivers to Cincinnati because they thought the Bengals were going to trade or get rid of T. Higgins. But it didn't happen. So that kind of throws all of the mocks off, right? Especially if you do those 3-rounders, because most people like to go beyond the first rounders. Well, one name that was very, very popular around that time was Tet McMillan. Tutorial, I believe that's how you say it. It's either Tetaroa or Tutorial McMillan. A wide receiver, 6'5", 220-something pound wide receiver out of Arizona. A lot of things started to go away about him when Tet said he didn't watch film, and Steve Smith Sr. Gave his analysis of Tet. He didn't like crush him. He just said he thought somebody else was better, but he didn't crush Tet too bad, other than to say that, maybe the feeling that I get from people that really pay close attention to that is that it's the top 5 aspect of it is what they started to question when they watched Steve and some other people who talk about Tet. But most people still have Tet going at some point. The latest I think I've seen him go is like 17 or 18 or something like that. I forget who the team was. It's so yeah, but I've seen Mason Graham go 15th. I've seen Will Campbell go 10th. I've seen cornerback from Michigan, I've seen him go in the 20s. So it's just like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But one thing that has always been sort of one of the things that I held on to, the batting average for this has kind of gone down lately because of all the information. But about 8-9 years ago, I used to say, whoever you start mocking people to back in February or March, and then when the analyzing portion of all of this comes into play, and all of the group think, and all of the people putting out their mocks, and all of the experts start telling all of their lies, you end up going in another direction. And maybe until it's recent, I said 7 years, maybe until it's recent is like 4 years ago, before this thing went into complete out of control overload, the draft. I used to always say, go back to those initial drafts, go back to those initial mocks, the ones after all of the paralysis by analysis. You just go back to the ones that you did in February, like the first week of free agency. And 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to be closer than you are with the mock you just did a week prior to the draft. I didn't do a mock prior to the draft, but I have been doing player profiles. But it's been a while since I touched on Tet McMillan. So why are we back here? Well, because there's some Tet McMillan smoke. There is smoke. I can't tell you where the smoke initiated from, but I can tell you this. I woke up this morning to my TL here on the Monday before the draft, all prepared to talk to you about the subject that I'm actually talking about. And the irony is it happened. People have started rolling around and mocking Tet McMillan back to the Jaguars at number 5. I don't know how they knew I was going to do the show about this today, but this is exactly what happened. And I wasn't going to center it so much as far as around Tet McMillan, as much as I was going to center it around what's going to happen and why there are multiple paths to this thing. And there's no reason for y'all to be upset. It's just going to be, the only reason you're going to be upset is if you've already attached yourself to one roadmap to their success in 2025 and beyond. And if they do something just totally different than what you expect, and then that's why people get upset sometimes, because they were wrong. I know that for a fact. Stood in the barbershop for 34 years and watched people damn near fight because a thought or idea that they had ingrained into and onto themselves like a tattoo didn't come true. Sometimes I start laughing when people make proclamations, knowing that in about a month they're going to want to swing on somebody in there because of that foolishness that they've attached themselves to that didn't even happen. So I always say, man, it's not about being right or wrong. It's just about kind of like vibing. And if you're wrong, just go, dang, they went another way. And the reason why I tell you that is because if you think they know exactly what the way that they're going to go, you're wrong. So why would you be wrong about something that the Jaguars don't even know what they're going to do? Because they don't know what's going to happen in front of them. So it's like it's not even anything to totally be upset about. And that's the only thing about this season. Like a lot of people that do what I do for a living, they're like, man, I can't wait till this is over. I've done some podcasts and I've jokingly said, I can't wait till this is over. And that's because of the element of this whole process that isn't real. You can say none of it's real. It's real that I got to cover it, and it's real that I actually enjoy covering it. But the part of this that isn't real is there are folks out here that don't care one iota of whether or not these dudes end up playing well or not. They just want the team to do what they want them to do. And if the team does something they don't want them to do and it ends up working, ain't nobody gonna come back and say, yeah, my bad, y'all. My bad, I got mad at y'all and talk crap about y'all forever. Folks just gonna go back and do the same thing next year. They're gonna argue about, like they're doing it right now. And I hate to even appear to be taken up for Trent Baalke, but they're doing it right now. This time last year, I told anybody and their brother that I wanted Brian Thomas Jr. or Quinyon Mitchell. And I got in an argument so many days. There's only one person, my boy Toriano's the only one that said my bad. Other than that, I mean, y'all don't owe me an apology, but at least don't come back this year and start arguing about the same stuff all over again. Y'all want to scratch each other's eyes out about these draft picks when they don't even know where the hell they're going right now. They don't know what they're going to do. But I'm going to talk about Tet McMillan. I'm going to talk about the many paths to consider by naming 3 or 4 players that if they take them, it'll be all right come Friday morning. Ain't nobody going to, wake up Friday morning and be ready to revolt. It'll just be that they're going to take this team on a mission that you did not understand the roadmap where they were going. That's all it is to it. I'll explain more of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Amazon Fire TV and Locked On. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into a gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty, Black Ops, and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribe services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube, third generation. All right, rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We got some smoke with Tet McMillan going at 5, just like we had early on. There were folks that didn't think Tet would get to 5 because they thought New England would take him, and they still might. Draft season is Lion season. Folks said Tet was falling in the draft. He didn't watch tape, didn't watch film. He ran a non-official 4.54 or something like that at his workout. And he ain't getting no shorter. His catch radius didn't change. So I don't know why people all of a sudden thought that Tet McMillan wasn't going to be a guy that people like. In a draft, especially, that after, one or two people, maybe three, there aren't many people that think that there are a whole lot of blue chips. Okay, because I keep hearing, all I keep hearing about, to be honest, is Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and Ashton Jeanty as like no-brainer selections. That Jenny to the Raiders thing is scary too, because this will be the second year they just got like the player that they believe was the best pure football player in college football. They got Bowers last year. You get them Tet again. I mean, you give them Jeanty again this year. They'll do that body of work thing where they believe the best player in the draft, even if it's not at a premium position. And to be honest, that's how you kind of put it together a little bit now. That's one path. The Jaguars are going another one, and it's a new path because we don't know anything about those guys. We don't know if they want to take Tet McMillan, if they want to move down a couple of spots, but they don't know that anybody's going to. The dangerous part about moving down is the Raiders. They don't know if the Raiders want Jeanty like that. They might. What if Shadour's still there? What do they do with that? Because Geno's contract, they can get out of it after one season at $26 million. There ain't a whole bunch of guaranteed money in there, even with an extension. So the Raiders sitting at number 6 behind the Jaguars. The Jaguars got to be careful. They move back, they might miss on the guy that they're targeting. Or they might miss on one of the thing is it worth it? Like last year when the Jaguars moved back, they got an extra 3rd and 4th. Like you're glad you got the extra 3rd and 4th this year. But then when you look back, was it really worth risking taking Brian Thomas Jr.? In my opinion, it was not. However, hindsight is always 20/20. So the thing is there are more paths to do this than you think. The Jaguar fans know that the Jags have 10 picks, and I think sometimes they feel like the Jags only like 15 players. That's not true. It's like 115. They figured out, they know exactly guys that are in the area of what they like. So a move back that would constitute another day 2 pick for them would only put them in a position to grab another one of those dudes that they believe is all bunched up together talent-wise, right? And take more bites of the apple in your first year. But you could also miss out on maybe the person that you absolutely believe, and I don't know if there's a consensus about this, the player that is reasonably going to be at 5 that you absolutely believe helps your team not only now, but in the future. So let's look at it. Let's go with Mason Graham, who we've all talked about. I don't think there's anything bad with adding a guy like that to your franchise. guy that uses his hands, a guy that fights. He might be more of a second move guy than anything, but that move is always going to be there. And then that third move, like he won't stop playing, when things don't go his way. And that's a big thing in the NFL. Like a lot of guys come to the league and that initial thing doesn't work and then they get stuck. Mason ain't like that. Mason gonna keep fighting, man. I think he's gonna always be in shape for a dude that's on the interior. The only reason you wouldn't consider Mason Graham a good possible addition to this team is if you're just looking at it just for 2025 alone, or you're just saying some of the things that people say, like for a top 5 pick, he just doesn't have the makeup that I want. But if the only makeup you're looking at is a physical, I mean, the dude's been a 4-star recruit ever since high school. There's nothing about him. Maybe he didn't grow a little bit. Maybe because he's not consistently 325, 330. It kind of scared you off like it did me a little bit. But make no mistake about it, they'll get better if they add him to the team. But when they do add him to the team, it will start making me think two things. Like, okay, well, what about the dudes that's already on the roster, like Mason Smith? And then it also makes me ask this question. I wonder who that second round pick is going to be. Because that's the thing about thinking about Mason Graham. You're thinking about the other things around him. When I think about Tet McMillan, I just think about all the plays he's going to make with Brian Thomas Jr. I think about how he makes this team look different. And it isn't like, okay, yeah, they had Matt Jones and they had Reggie Williams. They had other big, tall receivers. They had Allen Robinson. But they had none of those guys to the team when they had Brian Thomas Jr. The only person that I would ever say is close to Brian Thomas Jr. were two of them, Jimmy and Keenan. That's it. In terms of how good a singular player is at that outside position, I'm already putting Brian Thomas Jr. in the top 3 wide receivers that's ever played on this team. Period. I think he's one of the 10 best players to ever play on this team. And I'm saying that after only having one sample size, because he's not the kind of player, if somebody gets hurt, you can't hold that against me or them. But his character just doesn't seem like he's the kind of dude that's going to fall off. Speaking of which, I have to mention this too. Justin Blackmon got himself into some more trouble with those demons. It looks like he got caught under the influence driving again or something like that, or being in public. Pray for him, man. I wish him the absolute best. But around draft season, the reason why I mentioned that is because I just mentioned Brian Thomas Jr. I don't anticipate a fall off with Brian Thomas Jr. That he can control. Shout out to, like I said, Blackmon and the things that he's going through. But I'll just leave that at that. I hope he gets better. But the things, what I'm talking about is you never know if a guy's going to get banged up, right? You never know if a guy's going to be playing without a quarterback. Those are the things I'm talking about with Brian Thomas Jr. But I could see him and Tet McMillan playing together, and I can see what it looks like. And then there will be people that'll say, yeah, but a top 5 pick, you're picking a number 2 receiver. If y'all subscribe to that number 1, number 2 stuff, that's cool for me. Well, he's not even an X receiver. He actually is an X receiver. But the thing is I don't look at draft position and say, well, because you're picked here, you need this kind of individual production. I look at it as, what does picking you here do for us as a team? What does it make us look like? How does it make us super, super explosive? And I'm willing to tell you this, that if you were willing to send a second-round pick and pay T. Higgins $25 million, there's no reason you should be against the team using the top 5 pick on Tet McMillan. You just shouldn't. Nobody will care where they're picked as long as it looks a certain way. Nobody will care that a guy that you're picking top 5 is going to be a number 2 receiver if you're winning championships. Nobody will care. I'm telling you, if you're winning, go competing for championships, ain't nobody going to care where you got guys from at all. So there are many, many paths to go with this pick. Trading down is a possibility. Which way is best for the Jaguars? I'll give you my opinion. It's going to be weighted, though, because there's some things we don't know. I'll tell you what that is in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by the Armada Player of the Week, and it is our friends at Nissan and the all-new 2025 Nissan Armada. Each week, we're taking a look at our draft prospects to pick one that stands apart. The guy we believe showcased the strength and power needed to push the team forward as we look ahead to next season. That guy for me right now, this week's Armada Clear-Cut Player of the Week is Jalen Walker. And I'm going to tell you why Jalen Walker, man, because he has some intangible things. And I know we talk a lot about having things that make you intangibly rich. Well, Jalen Walker makes things better when he's on the field. The leadership, the stoutness against the run, the ability to have the instincts that he plays with. Jalen Walker is the absolute truth. He's heavy duty, he's rugged, and conquers the road or the road ahead of him with capable and confidence. And that's what the Armada does as well. You got to dream big and go big. When it comes to the Nissan Armada, they say go forth and conquer, and that's exactly what I think Jalen Walker does also. It's clear that our player of the week is out here ready to conquer the road ahead with confidence, just like you can in the all-new Nissan Armada or any of the outstanding vehicles. Just take the Nissan Armada, Rogue, or Pathfinder and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, man, we're moving fast and furious here through the Monday edition of Draft Week, talking about being back to where we started with the guys that we initially mentioned. It comes right back. All of the stuff we talked about, man, it comes right back to, doesn't it seem like number 5 comes back to Tet McMillan or Mason Graham or Ashton Jeanty? I saw a lot of that over the weekend. The Jaguars are going to get a guy that changes the identity of their team, but also is able to come in and play right away at a very, very high level for this football team. That's what I think they're going to do, unless they trade down. And even then, I think that they could go back and get some people. If they move down to, if they make a couple of, let's just say they go back from 5 to 8, and then they go from 8 to 13-ish or 14. If they end up in that area, that's when you can start looking at different guys like Derek Harmon. And I know we've talked a lot about Mason Graham, and if it's not Mason Graham, it has to be Walter Nolan. Hold on, my friends. I've been watching Derek Harmon stuff. I'm even thinking that if Derek Harmon is somewhere around the 20th pick, that the Jaguars would start looking from 36 to move back up into the second round and take him. And he's versatile. You say, well, what makes him different from Mason Graham? The fact that he can play, while he's probably best suited as a 3 technique, the fact that he can very well be like a Kenny Clark type, in my opinion, and play the 0 and play nose guard and line up next to a 3. He can be a 0 or a 1 technique and line up right next to a 3 technique. I think he's that valuable. And I think also at 6'4.5", 6'5", 313, I think eventually he can play at 320 like Jeffrey Simmons. And he'll give you the ability. It's almost like we talked about Marcel Darius, who could play 3 technique or nose guard. It gives you the ability to get some edge rush or some pass rush from a guy who can play the interior without sacrificing how stout you have to be to stop the run. So yeah, you got to watch it. If they move back, everybody keeps talking about Mason Graham and Walter Nolan. There's a dude named Derek Harmon. I think Derek Harmon is going to go in the top 15. So I'm only saying this, that if the Jaguars move, if they make a double move, and I would not be surprised. I did see one mock where Derek Harmon was in the top 10. I did. And it's from somebody that's reputable too. So names that you haven't heard, names that you have heard, and others that you haven't had associated with a certain team. What I'm telling you is there's like people that do the prognostication, and then there are like real live scouts. All right, I'll give it to you. Got a buddy of mine in Power 5 told me that he heard a lot of smoke about Harmon. Not necessarily to the Jaguars, but that him and his friends talked about Derek Harmon being a dude that a lot more people like than than are being reported. So when you look up and you keep hearing that stuff, and then the folks that are very, very credible, well, that makes me sit there and go, all right, Jacksonville, listen. His official weight, he's 6'4.5", 313 pounds, big old hands, long arms, can rush the passer, can get after it on the inside. Of course, started at Michigan State, played 3 years at Michigan State and 1 year at Oregon. Just a real, real good football player, man. The only thing is they talking about he carries bad weight and his top-heavy frame with tightness in his hips. That sounds like a dude that can play nose guard or three technique. The blend of size, speed, length, and strength, versatile, play up and down the line in odd or even fronts. I'm telling you, man. Twitchy upper body, the peekaboo, the block and shed to runner's lane choice. That's the kind of dude, the versatility that folks are talking about, where you can put him on the field and you can see Mason Smith lined up right next to him. Long term. So I'm telling you, there are names to think about if they happen to make a trade back or a double trade back, and then maybe not even have to go that far back. I'd say if they go back to 10, you need to start looking for them to make a choice, something like this. So if I had to choose the day, I'd say if they stay, it'll be it'll be Tet McMillan or Mason Graham. Mason Graham's probably leading it. If they move back one or two spots, I will go Tet McMillan. If they move back any more than 3 spots, like if they end up at number 10, if McMillan is still there, that's the choice. But if he isn't still there, I think you have to start being on Derek Harmon watch. There are a lot of things like this going to come up at the end of this that weren't like this at the beginning of the process. And that's one of them. I'm giving y'all right now, I think Derek Harmon goes a whole lot higher than people think. All right, man, make sure that whatever you do, you stay locked in with the Locked On Podcast Network. And check out our Locked On Mock Draft. Thank you for making Locked On NFL and Locked On Jaguars your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NFL Mock Draft available now on the Locked On NFL Draft. Go inside the Locked On War Room for all 32 picks in this Ultimate 7 Series episode. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is now available on Locked On NFL Draft's YouTube page or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you check that out. I don't think y'all be mad at the pick that I made. We did that a couple of weeks ago. I didn't want to trade, didn't want to move out, wanted to keep it simple. Hopefully you guys keep it simple with your coverage this week. Make sure you stay locked in with us. We got 3 more days, y'all. 3 more days before we wake up when the Jaguars are going to make their pick in the draft. We'll see y'all guys then, man, tomorrow and leading up to it with some more content. Make sure you tap in to Locked On Jaguars each and every day, wherever you get your podcast.